What's up, wizards? Welcome back to Across the Horizon, a collaborative effort between Hacking Fate and Renaissance Astrology. I'm Michael Beeson of Hacking Fate, and with me is Christopher Warnock of Renaissance Astrology. And let us jump into Aphorism 11 of the Centiloquium. And I read it first last time, so I'll let you read it first this time.
Okay, so this is the Partridge translation. It says, "Make no election of days and hours before you know the quality of the thing intended."
That's like really, really short. And the Ashman one is not that much longer. A day and hour are not to be elected until the quality of the object proposed shall be known. I think this one's going to be super short because this one really seems to say, know what the heck you're doing and don't try to elect until you know what you're trying to accomplish.
I think there's a deeper thing though with it too, is that when you think about the quality of something, it's really the essence of it, you know, and that's a much deeper understanding. I mean, in a lot of cases you can be kind of flip about it, right? But ultimately it's like the essence of it. And again, that harks back to that aphorism about the thing in mind being similar to the thing in reality. I mean, and that's again, I think what you need to penetrate through too. You need to penetrate through to the Platonic idea of something, to the essence of it, in a deep sense. Also, you need to know, but just in a basic sense, just as you brought up, is like, what are you doing here? I mean, if you're going to be, and I know people do that at elections. I mean, I have a very sort of practical approach. So for example, a business election, business election, I'm going to look at the first house and the first ruler, right? Because that's the business and the person who's using the election. And then second house for money, and then 10th house for the marketing, right? And it's all doable. And those are all, really positive things in the election. So, I'm like, okay, that's what we're going to focus on. That's what we're going to do. And I think that limitation there is sort of necessary in elections. And if you say I'm going to elect, the customers, all of a sudden that becomes a much more complicated thing because your pairings of first and seventh are very limited. And so you just don't have much choice as far as doing that. But again, I think just one of the things about modern astrology that there's a certain vagueness about the house assignments. Like, for example, I've heard people say, because in traditional astrology, the fourth house is the father and 10th house is the mother. In modern, if people say that the fourth house is the dominant parent, and it's like, well, which is very vague. You know what I mean? So then you're really kind of up in the air as far as what. So part of traditional is they just assign, or for example, like third house. It's like, well, third house is cars because cars are used for driving. It's like, well, yeah, but if you're driving cross country, would that make it a ninth house? Whereas in traditional astrology, it's going to be second house because it's a movable object. And they have much more fixed, and precise assignments of houses because you want to be able to know exactly what you're doing. And it's not as, it makes sense for psychological astrology. Maybe it should be more flexible or it's more vague. But when you're talking about specific things, material things, you want to be very specific about it. So again, that's, I think, getting at this too, is to say, look, you need to have a precise assignment of things. And that's going to make sure that you're not going to be confused. You're not going to have this vagueness and you're going to have abstract thinking. You're actually able to point to this specific house as ruling the thing that you want. So I think that's true too, is there's this idea of precision and very concrete assignments that's also important in traditional astrology.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of elaborate on your example of a trip in a car. So if you were wanted to do something like an election for a road trip, it would be the second house for the car itself and the ninth house for the cross-country trip. Or if you were just going to do something local in the town, it would be like the third house.
I wouldn't be doing the
right
car,
with that
though.
understanding?
I wouldn't be doing the car,
Well, it would be
though.
a weird.
I mean, that's
a
the
weird
thing.
election.
To me, it's like, I mean, if I'm going to buy a car, right, then I'm going to be looking at the first house. Almost always look at the first house because the person using the election is the first. But so the first house and the seventh house for the seller, right, or who's ever getting the car to me, and then the second house for the car, right? And so that's what I'm looking at for those. For the journey, it's like, again, I don't think I'd be looking, unless I was really worried about my car. I mean, like if my car was a junker or something and I was afraid it was going to fall apart or something. But normally you wouldn't be that concerned about the means of the transportation. You'd be more focused on the trip, and So it's interesting because it's sort of like there's a standard way that this is done, and it's not crazy to look at the second house, but it's just sort of, I look at that and go, no, it doesn't really, that's not how, and the source that I typically would use for this would be Ramsey's Astrology Restored or Astrologia Restaurata. And he's got like, every house with tons of information about it. So I would probably pull that out and I'd be looking at ninth house. And then he would have a lot of information, like the moon, for example. If, any kind of traveling, because the moon is the fastest planet, you'd be looking at, that's a natural ruler. So it's kind of arbitrary in some ways. It's a personal preference as far as what you want of the specific factors. And again, I wouldn't say that a car is crazy. I mean, if you come and tell me, oh, I need to look at the sixth house because that's the house of service, and I want to make sure that, like that, I would start being like, wait a second. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. So a lot of this kind of comes down to just personal preference with that. But, I think that, again, what are you trying to accomplish, and then also what's possible. I mean, that's the other thing about elections is you're just going to have to be limited in the houses and the factors that you look at. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to have 50 things in the chart or even 12, but are you going to be able to find those from 9 to 5 in the next 5 days? I had someone recently ask for an election over the next 2 days. And I was like, you can't have the greatest election of the century the next 2 days. Now, luckily, I was able to find a really good election for them. It was kind of funny. I was actually able to find something decent for them. But, when you're looking at a limited time frame, you're just not going to be able to get as much, that's going on there. But I think that is pointing at a really important point, which is that you better know what you're doing before you do it. And I think that's exactly how you started off. So we were able to talk a lot about that short aphorism and basically come back to the point that you made originally.
Absolutely. So we will see all of y'all next time. And then we will be covering, I suppose, 12. So check back in with you guys next week.